It's higher than any love. Good morning. Welcome to Coffee and Crypto, if you're here early. We try to bring you high-quality educational and informational content every single day. Why do you think the price is having such an anemic time? The news story of the hour. Jump onto the chart. Is this the beginning of a massive financial unraveling? We got to add a little addendum to the show map today. So we start here on the daily. Now, we've been looking at the RSI on Bitcoin's daily chart for the last several days. They always have been, but it's been increasing over the last 50 years since the government has been bigger. Hey guys, what's going on? Jeb here, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about the drop on Bitcoin, how Bitcoin has had a little bit of a correction, but we will be seeing where Bitcoin is heading next on its rally. I do apologize. It sounds like I am not having my my audio coming through. Give me 1 second. Oh. Check. Much better. There we go. I can hear myself now. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in. Really excited for today's stream. Just very excited about life in general. Had a great session of office hours last night. Mario De Leon was there. He may be in chat today. Had a great conversation with him. Guys, we've got a lot of really cool things we're working on. I am so very excited about some things that you guys are going to be seeing very, very soon. I've got some things kind of in an alpha state behind the scenes that I'm going to be launching relatively soon. Was working on that a lot yesterday. Worked almost 10 hours yesterday on some of that. So excited because you guys are going to have so many more resources to push you towards financial sovereignty not long from now. I cannot wait to give you those resources on financial sovereignty and on technical analysis and on cryptocurrency. And man, oh my goodness, I'm just very pumped. I'm very stoked. Maybe it's the kid in me just being so excited to share something cool with you guys. I love my job. I love what I do. I love the people I get to do it with. So thank you so very much for tuning in. I'm very excited for today's stream. Let's go ahead and read some chat. We've got almost 100 people in chat right now. Thank you guys so very much. Paul Torelli is here. He was the first. He said, good morning, BNB, TC, crypto alerts. In chat said good morning. Joe Bollier said good morning, Jeb. Dan Nolan is in chat. It's a good day for coffee and crypto. That's right. Jeremy Shorter said here early, Queens in chat. Ken Monk, Mr. Check 1984. Sal Ruiz said, Jeb, ¿qué pasa? Said muy bien, ¿y tú? Jeremy Shorter said, woohoo, let's get it. Valerie Valenzuela. Valenzuela. Tell me if I pronounced that correctly. I tried to figure out how to pronounce that yesterday. Tell me if I got that right. Aloha. And good morning, Jeb. God bless you and what you do. Thank you so much. Elionix Rodriguez said good morning, everyone. Ken Monk, Crispy Crypto Supreme is in chat. I need good news, Jeb, Sal Ruiz said. Okay, we can look for some good news today. Spartan Warriors in chat. Tim France in chat. Mike Lowry's in chat. Good morning, watching from Martha's Vineyard today. Boom. All right, let's get it. All right, don't go paddleboarding. Hashtag FinSoft, Queen said in chat. Whew, I'm excited. I can't even tell you a lot of the reasons I'm excited yet because the announcement day hasn't hit yet, but I'm excited, and I can't wait to show you guys some stuff. All right, you said close enough. Valenzuela? Valenzuela? Valerie Valenzuela? You'd have to tell. I don't know. It was my best shot. I'm sorry. If that's not it, you'll have to correct me sometime. All right, let's go ahead and jump on over to CoinMarketCap. By the laughing, crying emoji, I have a feeling I completely butchered the pronunciation there. Anyway, let's get started. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in. If you're enjoying today's stream, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Let's go ahead and look at the price of Bitcoin. Right now, Bitcoin is down over the last 7 days, down 2%, sitting at 29,266. So far, Bitcoin has managed to hold above the levels that we've spoken about it potentially going to. We've talked about Bitcoin going down to between 27.5 and 28.545. And we're going to look at those levels again today. And then we're going to continue to talk about the principles of trading, technical analysis, and investment and financial sovereignty that we need to use to figure out how to profit in these markets and keep those profits and grow them into the future. Over the last 24 hours, Bitcoin is up 0.41%. Again, down 2% on the last 7 days, down 2% in the last 90 days, because we're basically sideways from where we were back in April, about 90 days ago. We're up 76% year to date. Keep that in mind. Now, even before we get into this, I want to kind of talk to you guys about a concept, and that is about risk. Okay, so it's without the Z, it's Zuela. It's a soft U. Okay, Valerie Valenzuela. I guess that's correct. All right. I want to talk to you guys about a concept in investment that is very, very important, and that has to do with risk. Now, there's different ways that risk is calculated. There's different words that are given to it. Some people call it beta. Some people call it risk. Some people call it variability. Some people call it volatility. There's different words for the kind of concept that I'm talking about. But the concept of risk has a lot to do, it's typically measured by the difference between the highs and the lows on an average over a certain period. Over, for example, a year. What's the difference between the highs and the lows over a certain year? And then you look at that for multiple years into the past in any kind of investment. If you do that, you're going to find that the vast majority of cryptocurrencies are very, very high risk compared to the majority of other markets. So, for example, the stock market, the real estate market. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the cryptocurrency market is extremely young. That does not mean that cryptocurrency is not a good investment. Now, hear me very clearly here. Just time out. Make sure you hear that part of what I'm saying, because a lot of people say, oh my gosh, he said crypto's risky. Unsubscribe. I hate this. This is terrible. And that's not, my goal is not to tick you off. My goal is not to offend you. My goal is not to say, I don't believe in crypto. Guys, I've made almost 3,000 videos on crypto. I believe in crypto. But what I will tell you is that crypto is higher risk than most investments. There's a couple of things that come from that. Number one, you're going to lose a lot more money sometimes than what you are actually going to gain in a certain time period, even if you've invested in a good project like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Cardano or XRP. Now, I think is a pretty good investment considering the way that the case was decided. Now, the SEC, if you saw 2 days ago, seems to think that it was misruled. At the end of the day, the precedence is there whether the SEC likes it or not, and that is a difficult thing to say because I would have to say that even if they ruled against XRP, but that is the way it works, and we've got to be fair. The risk in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is both, one, a risk, something that you need to be careful of, but two, it's an opportunity. And so in cryptocurrency, if you manage to see the high amount of volatility as an opportunity, then that's where you will succeed. You've got to be able to figure out, how do I make the most out of this high risk investment? How do I ride these wild swings? And that's where technical analysis comes in. That's where the principles of technical analysis, the principles of trading, the principles of investment, and the principles of financial sovereignty all come into play to help you become a profitable trader and investor in the cryptocurrency space or in the real estate market or in the stock market or wherever it is you choose to park your money. This year, Bitcoin happens to be up 76% year to date. Last year, Bitcoin was down 76% year to date at the end of the year, somewhere around there, a number very close to that. So it depends on the year. To understand how to make the most out of this market, it is a very, very, very important skill to understand how the market moves. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the whole mantra of time in the market beats timing the market is not true. That is, for the most part, true. But to make the most out of cryptocurrency, because of the amount of risk that it has, because of the amount of volatility that it has, because of the massive swings that it undergoes, it is important to understand the technical analysis of the space. And so that's why we talk about it every single day. Just kind of want to put that out there because you're going to hear people say Bitcoin is very risky. You're going to hear people say that cryptocurrencies are very risky. And that doesn't necessarily always mean that people are saying Bitcoin is at a high risk of disappearing tomorrow. What they are saying is that Bitcoin has a lot of volatility and it goes up a lot and it goes down quite aggressively. And so being able to figure out where the best place to deploy your capital in that and make the most of those opportunities is very, very important. All right. Because the risk is high, though, the reward is often higher. But because you're dealing with a higher risk and a higher reward, your risk-to-reward ratio might be about the same, but you have to be even more careful about how and when and where and why you put your money into the space. So those are just a couple of kind of rapid fire principles about technical analysis. Nothing that's really, I'm not reinventing the wheel by telling you that. I think it's just a healthy reminder. Now, let's go ahead and look over here at the spaghetti models that we have on our chart because we like the meteorologist analogy, and we'll take a look at where Bitcoin is likely, to head. Bitcoin, as you know, did go through a major rally here in the month of June, broke all the way up to the ascending triangle pattern right here, hit its head on this zone of resistance between 31 and 31.5. We were not able to break through it, and as soon as we saw the XRP case get settled on July 13th, it was a Thursday, we found out that Bitcoin was probably not going to break bullish out of the symmetrical triangle pattern because it attempted to. It had every chip in its hands that it needed, and it just was not able to break through the level. Bitcoin was simply not strong enough to break above 31.5 yet. And so, from that day forward, starting on July 14th, we started predicting that Bitcoin would come down into this box between our uptrending level of support and our level of support at 28,545. So far, Bitcoin has taken its first step towards that level, and it did so on Sunday night. I did it yesterday morning, actually. It was, I guess you could say it was Sunday night, but it was actually the morning of Monday. Bitcoin broke bearish out of this bearish trading channel, this bear flag, and we broke down to eventually 28,877. If you'll remember to yesterday, Bitcoin broke down this entire distance in the span of about 38 seconds. World record on a bull kind of territory. This is not very long that Bitcoin broke down here. So if you didn't see yesterday's stream, I would highly encourage you to go back and watch yesterday's stream, because first of all, it was about 15 minutes longer than a normal stream, because I got right up on my high horse in my soapbox just explaining some things to you. But I also explained to you how you can make the most of those trades, even though it happened in 38 seconds. I explained to you how you could set up a very profitable, as far as risk to reward ratio is concerned, trade to automatically catch movements like that. So if you want to see how to trade a movement like that happens in 38 seconds, definitely shorter amount of time than it takes for you to open your laptop, go onto Binance or OKX or Bybit or wherever you're trading and get in a trade. I showed you how you still could have managed to catch that trade. So definitely go back and watch yesterday's stream. I think it was one of the better ones that we've done in a while. But talking about where we are now, Bitcoin has come down and has gone through some consolidation. There's a couple of things I want you to notice. First and foremost, the volume is significantly elevated down here around 29. Bitcoin was kind of sitting up here in the clouds, minding its own business, floating. There wasn't a lot of battle going on up here, for lack of a better phrase. There wasn't much volume. You can see the volume moving average here on the 1 hour 20 moving average. If you don't know, volume comes equipped with by default, 20 simple moving average on it, going through the volume bars. You can see this moving average shows that we've had higher volume in the last 24 to 48 hours than we've had on average in quite some time, going back pretty much until that XRP case was settled. So we're seeing a lot more fighting down here. I like to use the analogy with volume like this. The volume is somewhat like having two armies facing off against each other. And if you've got, 2 scouts in the Roman army and 3 scouts from the Gallic army, and those 5 dudes are going at it, that's not a lot of volume of conflict. But if you've got Caesar's legions, plural, and he's got 40,000 men, and he's at the Battle of Vercingetorix, and he's got, he's facing off against 30, 40, 50,000 men, and they wall him in when he tried to wall them in. Very interesting battle. Go back and watch it. Historia Civilis has a great video on that. But, not sure why that came to mind. That's a really cool battle. Not cool. A lot of people passed. But anyway, when you have 70,000 men fighting, then that is a lot of volume. Horrible volume, terrible volume. I'm not a fan of war, but it is a lot of volume. And I hope you get my point. And so when you have that extra volume, then that is a much better predictor of who's actually stronger. And it also creates more decisive battles in warfare. If you have 80% of each nation or people's army committed to a battle and one of them wins, well, they're probably going to win the war if you've got such heavy volume. But if you have 2 Roman scouts and 3 Gallic scouts and they go at it and they're like, they got their clubs out and everything and they're saying, "Hey, I'm better. No, you're better." And then it devolves. That's not really going to give you a good idea of which army's stronger, because it's just not a lot of volume. And so, for example, on Bitcoin, when we're looking at movements like this movement to the upside and we see very low volume, this is a little bit like the Gauls. If you don't know, the Gauls were the people group that lived in modern day France, and Rome invaded them in about 50 BC, 50-ish BC. This is a little bit like the Gauls beating the Romans. The Gauls ended up losing, obviously. The Romans took over that territory. They held it for several centuries. But this is a little bit like the Gauls winning a little battle between 2 scouts over here and then 3 scouts over here. It's insignificant. It doesn't actually matter. And so Bitcoin broke to the upside, and metaphorically, the Gauls won that battle. Let's say the Gauls are the bulls. But then when the cards dropped and the armies actually faced off and the massive just calamity of warfare took place, The Romans won. And you can see that because there's a lot more volume. The fact is, this drop was far more significant than this rally, not just because it was bigger, but because there was more volume. I hope you get my point. If you've got a battle with a lot more percentage of the nation's military in that battle is by its very nature, based on its size, going to be more decisive than a couple of dudes facing off. And similarly, if you have a breakout on very low volume, that doesn't tell you a whole lot. You can break out on very low volume, and it's not going to mean a whole lot. If you have a breakout on huge volume, it does mean a lot because it shows a decisive victory, not just some random little skirmish. It shows an actual landmark battle between the bulls and the bears. You can personify the bulls and the bears however you want. If you want to follow that analogy, the Gauls, the Romans, the Russians, Ukraine, whatever it is. You know, obviously I hate warfare as far as the consequences of it. It's not something I enjoy at all, but it is probably the most helpful analogy I can give for the battle between the bulls and the bears because it is always ongoing and it'll never stop. And right now, the bears have been winning. Why? Because as they push us further to the downside, we see high volume. This means that these movements to the downside are decisive. The majority of these candlesticks are red. It's a slight majority. It's about 55 to 60% of them over the last 24 to 48 hours are red. Now, we did see high volume from the bulls breaking bullish here over just the last 2 hours. And so that's something we want to take account of. Maybe the bulls are trying to make a breakthrough. Maybe they're going to actually be able to make some progress in this battle that's been ongoing for 2 days. But we shall see on that. Right now, Bitcoin finds itself in an ascending trading channel, which you can see right here, and it makes sense that the bulls would be able to break up to about 29.3 as they're doing as we speak. I mean, there's been bullish movement right now because we're in this bullish channel. The question now becomes, and this is something we may end up having the great pleasure of commentating on live, the question becomes, can Bitcoin break above this uptrending level of resistance? I'll just go ahead and draw it as red briefly because that is how I like to denote, where is it? That's how I like to denote resistance. Let's go ahead and turn it red. So the question now becomes, can Bitcoin break bullish out of this descending, rising trading channel? Because if you'll remember, the way that we got into this predicament in the first place was we had a bearish trading channel right here. It's a bear flag. The market predicted that we were going to break bearish, and Bitcoin did just that. In fact, the price target was down here around 29.2. Bitcoin would go down to 29,000. So the bears actually pushed the market even further than they were called to by that bear flag. Now the question becomes, is Bitcoin going to follow this same bear flag and break down to 28,545 now? Or is Bitcoin going to bounce for a little while, break up to 29.7, and then hit its head there and reject? From there, it could also rally. There are a lot of different ifs. Now, I just want to give you a principle of technical analysis that I think is overlooked. And honestly, I think I have probably overlooked this some in my career as well. It is very important to understand that the point of technical analysis is not, hear me very clearly here, because I definitely need to do a better job about sharing this with you. The point of technical analysis is not to predict which direction the market will go. That's not the point. You can do that with technical analysis. That is possible, and that is an application of it. A little bit like with meteorology, the point of meteorology is not to predict whether the hurricane is going to hit Jacksonville or Tampa. That is not what meteorology is, right? The point of astrophysics is not, the point of astronomy is not to predict whether the asteroid's going to hit Earth or not. That's not what astrophysics is. That's not what meteorology is. That's not what technical analysis is. Technical analysis, meteorology, astrophysics, name a science, name an art. They are for the purpose of study, understanding, and creation. The purpose of technical analysis is I often say it's the art, not the science, but there is a science to it as well. It is the art and the science, really, of understanding how the market moves, why the market moves, and yes, where the market has moved and why and when and how, and where it may in the future. And one of the uses of that understanding of markets is, yes, you can predict with some percentage likelihood which direction Bitcoin will go. It's not that meteorologists never tell you whether it's going to hit Tampa or Jacksonville or Miami. They will do that. That is an application of meteorology. But the purpose of meteorology, what meteorology is the study of atmospheric science. It's the study of the way water molecules evaporate off the ocean, how dust particles coming off of the Sahara mix with that water that is evaporating at a certain temperature to a certain altitude, and how that can create a vortex that turns into a hurricane, how that hurricane grows based on water temperature over the Atlantic. and moves on towards the Bahamas and the Caribbean and then hits somewhere in the southeastern United States or the northeastern United States. That's the study of meteorology in the Atlantic Ocean. That's what the study of meteorology is studying how the whole system works. It's studying how this one section of creation functions. That's what technical analysis is as well. With that, though, again, meteorologists will predict where a hurricane's going, but that's not what meteorology is. That's just one of the applications of it. Similarly, material science, it's not studying what the best steel alloy you should use to put in a Toyota Camry, but that's something you can do with that understanding. Hope that makes sense. The reason that I mention that is because whether Bitcoin breaks bullish or breaks bearish is tangentially important. Because as I love to teach, and this is really empowering, and this is, I think, something that people need to hear about technical analysis, it is not so important which direction Bitcoin breaks. What is more important is understanding if Bitcoin breaks bullish or if Bitcoin breaks bearish, how do I, the trader, the investor, capitalize on that movement? And similarly, just to use the analogy and really drive my point home, with meteorology, the point is not so much to say it's going to hit Tampa. Hopefully not. I have friends in Tampa. It is more to say it could hit these 5 cities. It's got this likelihood of hitting each one of them. So because it's this likely of hitting each city in Florida, I live in Florida, so this is obviously very significant to me. I've been through hurricanes before. Since it has this likelihood of hitting each city, 10% is going to hit Miami, 80% is going to hit Jacksonville, 10% is going to hit Tampa. If it's less likely to hit Miami, then Miami, risk to reward, they put less work into preparing for the storm. They're still going to prepare for it because it's possible. But if it's overwhelmingly likely it's going to hit somewhere else, they don't put as much work into it. Tampa, they're going to put less work into it. Jacksonville, now they have an 80% likelihood that it's going to hit them based on what the meteorologists are saying. So they're going to put the overwhelming amount of work in because they're very confident that it's going to hit them. Similarly, 80% chance Bitcoin breaks bullish, 20% chance Bitcoin breaks bearish. Prepare for the less likely scenario, prepare more for the more likely scenario, but prepare for both of them is what wisdom would tell you. So with this movement, let's try and do 2 things. Number 1, actually 3 things. Number 1, let's try and understand what's going on with the market right now. Number 2, let's attempt to understand which direction Bitcoin may break. And number 3, let's attempt to make a plan for how, for what we will do if Bitcoin breaks in that certain direction. All right, again, first and foremost, let's understand the current state of the market. The current state of the market on Bitcoin is as follows. Bitcoin has been in a massive bull market this year. It has made huge gains. Again, as we talked about on CoinMarketCap earlier, Bitcoin is up 76% year to date. I'm very excited about that because I believe Bitcoin has begun a new bull market. In fact, I believe that Bitcoin has moved into what I call the pre-halving phase of the bull market. And the pre-halving phase of the bull market is essentially this. The Bitcoin market typically goes into the majority of its bullishness, of its bull market gains following the halving event. The halving took place right here about the second week of May 2020. The vast majority of that bull market took place almost immediately after the halving. The same thing happened here in 2016 and 17. Post-halving is where the majority of the gains were made. Bitcoin rallied $19,000 before the halving, rallied $500. $19,000 after the halving. It rallied $500 before the halving. Now, it did rally 3,000% after the halving, and it also rallied 300% before the halving. 10 times the movement happened after the halving. From here, you take about the average price because the pandemic was a bit of a black swan here. The market moved, let's say, about 160% before the halving. After the halving, it moved 650%. So you can see the halving really catapults Bitcoin into much bigger gains. Again, we're talking 300, 500% gains. We're up 94% right now. We may end up moving 300 or 400% from where we started, around $40,000, or excuse me, maybe 100 to 200% from $40,000 up to about $60 to $120 to $140,000 post-halving. That would move us on into 2025. That's kind of the broader context. The shorter term context is that Bitcoin attempted to break bullish above 31.5 on the back of certain news, such as the XRP case being settled in favor of XRP for the most part, and such as BlackRock coming out with their Bitcoin ETF application, and that ETF application and many others being taken very seriously by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Both of those pieces of news are significant, and the market shall not forget them, but the market sentiment, which is much more news-based and much more, what happened in the last 48 hours, has kind of stopped thinking about those movements, even though they are still important. Hopefully that makes sense. You haven't heard much about the Russian-Ukrainian war relatively recently, but it is still obviously very, very important. It's just not in the news cycle right now. So those pieces of news are not so much in the news cycle right now, so they're not impacting the price the way they did when they first came out. When BlackRock came out with its news, That's what happened to Bitcoin when XRP case was settled. That's what happened to Bitcoin. So again, that's kind of the context for where we are in the medium term. Short term, Bitcoin broke below this uptrending level of support right here. We fell below it. We tried to hold above 29.7, which was a previous level of support that we had set over and over and over again. June 30th, we set a support. July 6th, we set a support. 22nd of June, we set a support. We're not able to hold that. And on Monday, now we're getting into the very shorter term timeframes, we broke bearish. Again, I showed you yesterday how you could have traded that movement for profit, and we saw that Bitcoin had a bear flag right here on the hourly chart that led us below 29.6. Now we're moving into the exact same formation. So in recent memory, Bitcoin has precedence to say that Bitcoin breaks bearish out of bear flags. Whoop-de-doo, that's what they normally do with about 70% likelihood. The question now becomes, will this high volume benefit the bears, and will the bears be able to push Bitcoin back down to 28,545? And that leads us into the second part of our analysis. Again, first of all, I want to talk about where Bitcoin has come from and what the current market looks like. And I'll just give one more recap about that. We've predicted, and I still stand by this prediction, that Bitcoin will likely fall down to this zone. I think I deleted it. I did. Oh my goodness. I'll have to redraw it. We'll fall back down to this zone right here between this uptrend and 28,545. So again, that's kind of the first part of what I want to talk about. That's the current scenario that's going on in Bitcoin. Secondly, let's talk about which direction Bitcoin may break out of this symmetrical, out of this this bear flag, ascending trading channel, which is a bear flag, is the technical term. And then from there, we'll kind of make a plan for what we will do with both scenarios. And this is the exact process that I want you to go through when you are trading. This is exactly step 1, 2, and 3. And this is something I want to teach you guys. I don't want to just teach you what all the variables mean on RSI. And there's a lot of work I need to do in Club DeFi to help teach you guys this. There are hundreds, if not over 1,000 videos that I need to make in our courses architecture to teach you guys these things. But I'm giving it to you for free right now, so pay attention. You might want to take some notes. Again, first step, analyze the current state of the market. Where is everything? Where are all the pieces? What are all the impactors? What's the news? What are the technical analysis? Understand the current state of things and the recent state of things. That's what we did first. Second of all, we're going to try and predict with a certain likelihood what happens if, which direction the market will break with what likelihood. Again, that is a part of technical analysis, but it's only a part, and it's not the point. The point is to have a plan, not to figure out what happens. Again, using the analogy of meteorology, the application of meteorology is actually not just to understand where the hurricane's going to go. The real application of meteorology is so that the city that's going to get slammed by a Category 5 hurricane can prepare, right? Anybody who remembers Katrina, New Orleans was not prepared. They were not prepared. And I'm not getting into the politics of that. I'm not knocking anybody for that. I'm just saying the fact of the matter is they were not prepared. And it was horrible. Cities that have been hit by similar sized hurricanes, it sucked, but they were more prepared. And so there was less loss of life. There was less lawful property damage. I think the property damage, and you guys can correct me on this, but it was like, God, it was in the tens or maybe even hundreds of billions of dollars it was done to New Orleans. They're still recovering from it. And so similarly for us, this is much lower stakes. Of course, we're talking about a trade here, not, the loss of life and everything. It's horrible that happens with that. But similarly, with meteorology, you first understand what is the state of things. Oh my gosh, look, there's a hurricane. Wow, we should probably do something about that. How does it work? Well, luckily, we've been studying meteorology for 200 years, and we have all this history, so we can get a pretty good understanding of what is happening right now off in the Atlantic Ocean. Second step, what's the likelihood of that hurricane hitting X, Y, and Z city? And third of all, we put a plan in place. 1, 2, 3, basic stuff, and they are things that we'll be continuing to teach in the future. So again, we went over the first step, understanding and analyzing the current situation. Second step, let's talk now about which direction Bitcoin is likely to move. Again, it's a part of technical analysis, but it's actually not the point. The point is the plan. We'll get to that in a minute. And that's where the principles of trading or investment come in. So what's more likely here? Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. You might not like this, but I believe that our original prediction of breaking down here to this zone is still intact, even though Bitcoin has gone through somewhat of a bounce over the last 24 to 48 hours. And part of the reason for that is because this bear flag is, remembering the principles of technical analysis, bearish. There we go, right? There's about a 65 to 70% likelihood from my analysis that bear flags will break bearish. That's why they're called bear flags. And a bear flag is basically just Bitcoin moves up in a trading channel, sideways in a trading channel, or down in a trading channel, and the market was moving to the downside when it entered that trading channel. From there, it's about a 65 to 70% likelihood, as far as I can tell, based on any based on any direction, whether it's up, sideways, or down, bullish, neutral, or bearish. There's about a 65 to 70% likelihood that you'll break bearish out of that pattern. Again, we need to remember these principles of technical analysis because they will help to guide making informed predictions. And even if the prediction doesn't come true, we're still making those predictions based on principled analysis of the market. So with Bitcoin moving bearish into this trading channel, we take that into account, and we have to remember in the back of our mind, okay, it's statistics are not always reality, but they oftentimes are. It's kind of the definition of best definition I can give you of statistics. Statistically, we're more likely to break to the downside. I'll keep that in mind. Now, let's look at some other technical indicators. Before we do that, we first want to use more principles of technical analysis and get an understanding of what time frame we ought to be looking at this market on. I would personally recommend, based on 6 years of doing technical analysis, to use the hourly chart. And so that's why we're on the hourly chart. The reason for that is because oftentimes when you're looking at a movement, I want to look at a few dozen candlesticks, not more, not less. I don't want to look at 100 candlesticks for the kind of area I'm looking at. If you want my chart vision, this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at this area right here. I'm not really thinking about this movement because this is kind of a different era. This is a different chapter for Bitcoin. We're in an accumulation phase. We're in an accumulation phase. We're in a symmetrical triangle pattern. Break out of it. Now we're in a new era. Kind of a new era dawned right here when we broke bullish and then fell. So I'm looking pretty much at everything past this. If you just kind of look at how many candles, we're looking at about 50. Again, as I said, a few dozen candles. That's 4.25 dozen or 4.2 dozen candles, right? So whatever time frame it takes to get to that is what I'm going to do. The 4-hourly chart, I'm going to be looking at too few candlesticks. I'm going to be looking at, I don't know, probably about 12. I'm looking at 11, 12 candlesticks. It's a little bit not enough information. If I'm on the 15-minute chart, I'm looking at, it says it right here, about 188 candles. I'm just going to, based on my experience, I want to look at between 2 and 6 dozen candlesticks. I'm looking at the hourly chart right now, and I might go down one time frame down to 30 minutes. I might go up 1 or 2 time frames of the 2-hour and the 4-hourly chart to look at it from different angles, but that's the way I'm going to analyze things. All right, now we're on the hourly chart and we've decided our time frame. We're going to look at our technical indicators. Lux Algo is bearish, and it has been for a week and change. That's going to give me a lot of context. And looking out on the hourly chart to look at this longer period now to get an idea of what Lux Algo is telling me, you can see that the Lux Algo trend catcher has dropped more significantly in recent memory than it has at any point in the last month. Looking at the 4-hourly chart, because if we're looking at this longer movement, I'm going to want to look at a higher time frame, maybe the 8-hour, because that's going to give me about 80 to 100 candlesticks. You can see a similar thing. We have seen a sell signal on the 8-hourly chart. On the 4-hourly chart, this is the most aggressive drop we've seen on trend catcher yet ever since we went through this rally. You can see trend catcher dropped right here, dropped right there, and these are the only other drops that we witnessed. So Lux Algo is giving me quite a lot of bearish confirmation right now. Looking back down to the hourly chart with that in mind, I am then going to give quite a lot of credence to the fact that we're under a sell signal. And I'm also going to be quite skeptical of this buy signal. This buy signal has not been confirmed, and it would not be confirmed unless Bitcoin broke above the trend catcher, because you don't get a confirmed buy signal. You don't get a you don't get the trend catcher turning green on a buy signal unless you break above the red trend catcher. Does that make sense? For Bitcoin to have trend catcher turn green, naturally, the market has to be above the trend catcher to drag it to the upside. The trend catcher is not going to turn green before the market gets there. That's just not the way it works. So we're not going to get a confirmed buy signal until we get above trend catcher. That would require Bitcoin going to nearly $30,000. What does that mean in English? That means I'm not paying much attention to this buy signal. That means that if Bitcoin breaks up here, I'm not giving it the time of day that it's going to be a proper, strong, bullish movement until it breaks to probably $30,000 and beyond, which means I can quite confidently sit in the camp of the bears, and the technicals are going to back me up on that. Furthermore, short term, we may see a bounce. Short term, there's evidence that we could see a breakup to maybe 29.5. As we see, the MACD has come down, it is rallying very aggressively. But we can also see that we've seen a huge drop. The last time we saw a drop anywhere near this large, it was larger actually, was back here on the 14th of July. If we look at what happened following that, we saw a confirmed sell signal on Lux Algo. We dropped $2,000, and we've been dropping ever since. When we saw that happen, we saw very aggressive bullish MACD, the same way we're seeing right now, and that was only taking place because Bitcoin is trading sideways. It did not lead to a trend reversal. So I'm not going to give too much weight to this buy signal on I'm not going to give too much weight to this bullish cross on MACD because it's just Bitcoin resetting because it moves so far to the downside on MACD. When the market trades sideways, your oscillators are going to reset to 0. There's another principle of technical analysis for you. You can see how I'm kind of dropping them in here. And the point of learning TA is not to learn all the principles. The point of learning TA is to learn the process, and the principles are a part of applying it. It's a big difference there. Same thing with RSI. RSI went from 80 to 23 in, let's see here, 15 bars, 15 candlesticks, 15 bars. You missed one more to get 4 verses. RSI dropped very hard, very aggressively. Same thing we saw in our last major drop, which was right here. RSI dropped that quickly, put the market into a new downtrend. All of this to say, this little bitty candlestick movement to the upside does not make me think the bulls are in charge. Could the bulls make a little bit of a resistance and move to the upside? Up to 29.7? Of course they could. Of course they could rally up here to 29.7. That would not be a trend reversal. For a trend reversal to take place right now, I would need confidence from Lux Algo and from the other technical indicators that Bitcoin has really started something new. And to see that, I would need to see Bitcoin go to at least $30,000. Now, the movement to $30,000 could be profitable, and we'll talk about how to plan for that in a moment. But all of this gives me confidence that even if Bitcoin does break to the upside, it will hit its head around 29.7. That's our previous major level of resistance, and reject, and we'll continue moving to the downside. So hopefully you can kind of see my thought process about how I go about this. Again, first and foremost, I analyze the situation. I take my binoculars, I look through my geostationary satellite, and I look at the Atlantic Ocean. I say, is there a hurricane? It's the first question. I say, what is the water temperature over the Atlantic? I say, what is the condensate? What is the dew point? I'm not a meteorologist. Come on, help me here. What's the dew point? What's the, excuse me, not the dew point. What's the condensation point? Whatever. I need to just quit. I'm not a meteorologist. Maybe I should go learn about meteorology for better analogies. Go study the situation. What's going on? How much dust and sand is coming off of the Sahara? That's a big part of it. What's the temperature? What are the air currents like? How much rainfall was there over the Atlantic Ocean? What's the water temperature at the surface? What are the currents like? There's a lot that goes into it, okay? So you're going to analyze the situation, and through your expertise, then you'll make a prediction. Again, you do have to have a certain level of expertise to say, 1, I think a hurricane is going to form. Number 2, I think it's going to go this direction. Number 3, I think it's going to hit that city. That does take a level of expertise, and I want to help you get that in technical analysis so you can do what I'm doing. You can kind of see that's what the meteorologist does. As you can tell, I'm not one, but I am a technical analyst. I have been doing it for over half a decade, and you can see that I can kind of pick this apart and say, I see what Bitcoin's likely to do next. Likelihood, not promise. Likelihood is that Bitcoin is going to break to the downside, even if it has a small break to the upside first. Now I'll ascribe a percentage to it. This is kind of a ballpark. This is nothing to hold me to. This is nothing to hold you to. I'm going to give it, a lot of times I like to go about 20, 80, 30, 70, 40, 60, somewhere in there. I'm going to give it probably a 35% likelihood. And this is just, again, this is head math. This is just intuition. This is not a mathematical prediction as you would do in meteorology, and as you theoretically can do in technical analysis. I don't see much use in that because, again, the prediction is not the point. The point is the plan. We'll get to that in a minute. But I'm going to give it just a kind of a gut feeling, kind of an instinct based on the experience I've had. About a 35% likelihood, and we'll see what happens. About a 35% likelihood Bitcoin breaks up, and probably a 10% likelihood it breaks above 29.7. Of that 35% likelihood, there's probably a 10% likelihood inside that it breaks to the upside. So 25% likelihood it breaks to 29.7, 10% of that it breaks to 30. I give it, I guess the opposite would be about a 65% likelihood it breaks, well, actually, I'll give it about a 55% likelihood we break down. I'll give it a 10% likelihood we trade sideways, just for good measure. Again, these numbers are, in a way, kind of useless. They are important because we want to use them to weight how much preparation we put into each one of our plans. But other than that, they're actually not that important. Price predictions are useful, and they are fun, and in a certain way they are useful, but the actual point of the price prediction is to know where and how you should plan. So, with this in mind, I'll go ahead and delete all this because we're going to have to make some plans here and it's going to be in the way. But if we have a 55% likelihood we break down, 10% likelihood we trade sideways, 35% likelihood we break up, but it's probably going to end up being a bearish movement in the end, that helps us to have the understanding that we need to move on to step 3. Again, step 1, analyze the situation. Step 2, make a prediction. Step 3, use those predictions to know where you should focus your energy on making a plan. Hopefully that's helpful. Give me a 1 in chat if that 1, 2, 3 is helpful. Analyze, predict, plan. APP if you want to call it that. Analyze, predict, plan. Maybe I could make it the 3 Ps. Perceive, predict, and plan. Boom, there we go. I'm coming up with material for you guys on the fly. The plan here, we're going to start off with the most likely movement. most likely Bitcoin is going to go through a correction based on the analysis that we just did. So how do we prepare for that? Well, we first have to see, what would that movement be? What would constitute that movement starting? How would we know that that movement began? And how would we know that that movement ended? We would know based on our technical analysis that that movement begins based on a couple of criterion. First of all, for us to know that Bitcoin is broken bearish out of this symmetrical triangle, out of this bear flag here, sorry, bullish trading channel, bear flag. For us to know that we've broken bearish here, we need to first obviously break below the trend line. But second, I'd say we probably need to break below the most recent bottom. That most recent bottom is down here at 28,879. I like to take more conservative trades, but make sure that they have higher reward, lower risk, so that I can have a long-term strategy where I'm winning most of the time on these trades. So if we break down to 28,879, then we're going to end up wanting to put an entry price probably a little bit below that if you're shorting the market. And at this point, I don't think you would be crazy for wanting to short the market. The bulls have capitulated, at least for the time, and based on the analysis that I'm doing, which is the best I can go by, I'm not saying I'm the greatest technical analyst out there, but I want to do thinking for myself. It's another principle of everything, not just finance. Then I have a feeling, I have an understanding, a thought basis that Bitcoin's going to drop. So I'm going to probably put an entry price below. I'll turn off Lux Algo here for a second. I'm going to put an entry price below this level. And let me just make sure. I've been talking for a while. Let me just make sure everything's good. Yep, no audio issues. Cool. All right, great. Okay. Bitcoin is going to more than likely need to break below this candlestick. So we'll put an entry price just a little bit below that. Not an exact science. I'm just going to say a little bit below it, maybe $50 below. We'll call it 28,825, where I originally put it. I think that's fine. And again, this is a rough plan. This is not specific investment advice, and I would ask that you don't just follow these exact numbers. I would ask that you go on your own chart, you do your own analysis, you follow the 3 Ps, the perceive, predict, and plan method, and then place the trade yourself. Don't use this as investment advice. I'm not your financial or investment advisor, although I do fancy myself an educator, and I would like to share with you the processes that I think will be of assistance to you. All right, so again, let's put that at 28,825. Just a number. You could put it a few dollars higher, a few dollars lower. It's going to kind of come down to personal preference. Now, one of the principles of trading that I like to share with you guys is to start off by using very conservative stop losses. And in this case, what I'd say is that if Bitcoin falls below, because I like to grab these huge movements, these very decisive movements. That's what I like to do. If Bitcoin breaks below this level of support, use a very conservative stop loss. I'm talking in this case, maybe and if you're going to go with a conservative stop loss, a lot of times you want to go with a very conservative stop loss, because the market kind of does two things. Either one, it kind of inches in a certain direction, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down, or down and up and down and up and down and up, or it just, boom, shoots straight through it and you're not at risk of hitting the stop loss at all, because as soon as you pass the entry price, you're $500 lower than it. If you're going to use a conservative stop loss, a very tight stop loss, use a very tight stop loss. Because there's this kind of, and this is maybe a little difficult to explain, but there's almost this principle that if you have an extremely tight stop loss and the market's doing this number, and it's kind of going down, you're going to get triggered. But if it falls straight through the floor, then you're going to catch it. So your kind of trading strategy has to be, what kind of movement do you think is going to happen here? I personally think that if Bitcoin breaks bearish here, it's probably going to break bearish hard. It's probably going to move quickly and decisively. So I'm more comfortable in this case saying, let's use a pretty conservative stop loss. I'm talking in this case, $25. It's not much. Did I set that right? I believe 28,850. Where is my stop loss? 28,850. Right. Not 285,000. All right. So I'm also going to put my price target right here up just above our next major level of support. Remember, if you are a meteor and you hit the top of a skyscraper, you're going to find resistance at each floor you go through. If you're Superman and, you know, who does Superman fight? I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've watched Superman, but whoever Superman fights throws him straight through the floor. He's going to go boom, 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 boom. And eventually he's going to hit a floor, and the floor is going to be stronger than the amount of kinetic energy he has moving downward, and he's going to stop there. So on Bitcoin, you have to figure out where the floors are. That's where we find our levels of support and resistance. Again, all the principles of technical analysis come into play. The next floor for Bitcoin that I can find in my technical analysis, next one that people are really going to notice, is 28,545. And again, let's just look out for a second. Maybe there's something else that we want to keep in mind. You know, 28,545 is basically this level of resistance we set on the 29th of May. It's great. It's basically the levels of resistance we set here in March and April. So yeah, I'm pretty confident saying that's the next major floor that Superman falling through the skyscraper is going to hit. So that's probably where we want to base our next price target on. So what we do, we just go ahead and pull the price target just a little bit higher than the floor, just in case you get down there and you don't quite touch it, because that happens quite a bit in markets. Happens actually a lot in markets where Bitcoin will get very close to a level and it won't quite touch it. I mean, for example, 28,545 is a big, important level. It's been important for over 2 years. Bitcoin went through a big rally here that you could have traded and we didn't get there. You see, we rallied $100 lower than it. If your take profit was at 28,545, you would not have exited here, and you would have had to exit over here somewhere. Hopefully you would have seen the trade, and you would have missed out on the peak because you put your trade a little bit too far. So similarly, you want to put your trade, your exit just a little bit above the floor. And how much you do it, maybe 10% of the amount of profit that you're taking. So for example, if you're going to move 1% to the downside, then maybe if it's 1% to the floor or the ceiling that you're moving towards, then put the stop loss at 0.9 instead of 1. So for here, if we're going to move to the downside towards this level, about 1%, then maybe put the take profit down 0.9%. You see that? And that'll give us a rough exit around, let's say, 28,585. Sure. Maybe a little bit lower than that. 28,570. Nope, that's definitely not right. 28,570. All right. And so what that does is that gives us a 10x risk to reward ratio. That means you have 10 times more profit potential than you do loss potential. If you make enough trades on a 10x risk to reward ratio, you're going to make money. Basically guaranteed. It's the law of numbers. You do that enough times with enough expert technical analysis behind it, and it takes years to gain that expertise, but you can start today. You're going to make money. It's almost guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed, but you're statistically setting yourself up for success. And so that's the kind of trade I would go about on the short. Very briefly, I'm going to talk about on the long. First and foremost, where's our ceiling? And where's the place we'll probably stop the movement? Where's the place we'll probably start the movement? We're probably going to start the movement, and for the sake of time management, we're not going to put as much time into this trade because it's not as important, because it's less likely to happen. We're going to probably put our stop loss right below 29.7 because we know from previous technical analysis that's our next ceiling. Bitcoin has traded there quite a lot. We're going to put our entry just a little bit above this uptrending level of support. Then we're going to put our stop loss right below it. We're going to go for about a 8 to 15 risk to reward ratio. We're going to put a long trade something like this. Use the principles I just showed you. We're going a little long on the stream today, so I'm going to kind of cut it short, but I would cut it short anyway because it's less likely to happen. Come up with a trade and be ready. And what you can do is you can automatically set up both of those trades. If your exchange only lets you set up one trade, then do it on 2 different exchanges. Whatever you want to do, set up both trades, watch the market like a hawk, set an alert for if Bitcoin gets close to its close to the entry on the short or close to the entry on the long. Open up the market on your phone, see if it happens, and be there for the trade. Set it up automatically so it can happen without you, but make sure that you have an alert so you're there watching it. When your money is in a trade, you need to be there. So if you have an alert go off and a trade's not about to start and you're off on a date or you're asleep and you don't want to wake up, cancel the trade. Don't be in a trade if you're not going to be there for the trade. Okay, don't be there. Don't miss the trade. Set an alert to make sure that you are in the trade. Have the exchange send you an alert if it is able that a trade has begun. Be there for the trade, but have the trade set up automatically so you have your plan in place, and you can change that plan in the fly if you need to. And then for trading sideways, well, whoop-de-doo. You're not going to trade that because there's nothing to trade. So we're not even going to consider the sideways movement. That's why I oftentimes don't even give that a prediction. I just kind of think about it in the backside of things. That's how you do it. Again, I could probably have explained that in half the time, but I want to be detailed because this is kind of a new teaching that I'm trying to give you guys. I want to consolidate everything I've learned about technical analysis in the last half decade into a step-by-step procedure where you are able to apply it to make money in the market every single time. Repeat, 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 repeat. My dream is for you to do the same thing every single day and love it. Right? Because that's how we know that we found something that is truly fulfilling, where we do the same thing every single day and we love it. And sometimes we grow and we learn more things that we should do every single day and we love it. But we talk about in financial sovereignty, and we're going to talk about that more in the I was about to say something, but that is an announcement that needs to wait for a little while. Man, I came so close to revealing something that I'm not supposed to share yet. But we talk about that more in future content. I call it the 40-year plan. I call it 40-year habits. 40-year habits. What I am building at the company, teaching about financial sovereignty, teaching about technical analysis and investment, these are principles that I still want to be teaching 40 years from now. I am 22 right now. I'll be 62 then. Israel wandered the wilderness for 40 years, and there were habits that they did every single day for 40 years that showed them something. They went out 6 days a week, and they collected manna off the ground, and they ate it, and they did that every single day for 40 years. And many of them did not, but they should have bowed down and worshiped the Lord every single day for 40 years, and they would have been better off because they did that, and they wouldn't have had to wait that long to get into the promised land. Same thing with Moses. You look at them in the wilderness and say 40 years. That's a long time. That is a generation. The definition of a generation is 40 years. That's the reason they were there for that long. What could you do every day for a generation? Build your life that way. I want to go to the gym every day, nearly, about 5-6 days a week, for a generation. I want to come to work every day, 5-6 days a week, mostly 5 days a week, for a generation. I want to study God's word every single day, 7 days a week, for my whole life, but for 40 years at least. I want to teach on financial sovereignty every day for a generation. That's one of the ways that you know you're on the right track. You can follow this step-by-step process in any market. You can follow this step-by-step process in any cryptocurrency, in any investment. Perceive, you can do this in real estate, and there's no line chart for the real estate market. Perceive in real estate. What is the state of the market in Los Angeles County? What's the state of the market in Miami-Dade County? What's the state of the market in whatever county New York City's in? Is it New York County? I have no idea. What is the state of the market in that county? Perceive. Predict. Where do you think the market's going to go? It's going to go up. It's going to go down. That's pretty much the two predictions. And people make fun of me for that. They say, Jeb says it's going to go up or it's going to go down. Wow, look at him. Where'd he get his degree from? Man, he has no idea what he's talking about. Duh, it can go up or go down. It's obviously going to go sideways. We already knew that, but other than that, there's only two other dimensions. It goes up in price or it goes down in price. Do yourself a favor. Get rid of the haters. Take their advice, because sometimes they give you good counsel. Sometimes a 3-year-old making fun of you can point out something that you ought to do something about. Make a prediction. I think with this likelihood it's going to go up. I think with this likelihood it's going to go down. Based on those predictions, this is pretty much all you do with them. It's basically all you do with these predictions. Plan. If the housing market goes up by 25%, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to prepare myself for that. If the housing market goes down by 25%, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to prepare for that. I'm going to have a plan in both. I'm going to have a plan in place for both. I'm going to have my main plan, my contingency. I'm going to have my main trade, my counter trade. I'm going to have my hedge, and I'm going to have my bet. However it is you want to phrase it. Perceive, perceive, predict, and plan. Happens in every single market. You can use it every single day for the next 40 years to make a plan about how to invest your money. Hopefully that was helpful. You guys can tell me if it was. All right. Let's go ahead and read some chat. Really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that post notification bell for more teaching on investment, trading, and financial sovereignty, all things that I want to really, really, really hammer home and help you guys to understand. And also, if you enjoyed today's stream, make sure to sign up for the Principles of Technical Analysis. You're going to learn those Principles of Technical Analysis over there that we're going to use in teaching you how to go and be a profitable trader and investor. You can find that with the link in the description box down below, and it will help our channel a lot, and it will also help you to learn the foundational understanding you need in technical analysis to become a technical analyst. At the same time, make sure to sign up for LuxAlgo using coupon code JEB30, JEBB30, because it's really going to help you a lot in that prediction mode. It's going to give you not only the prediction, but also the plan and the perception. It's going to help in all three steps for what you need to do to make money in a trade, because it does a wonderful job about predicting that a new movement has started by using trend catcher and the buy signal, and it also does a wonderful job of predicting where the market's going to stop. Remember, the plan, you need to understand where does the movement start, where does the movement end, put the entry a little bit past the beginning of the movement, and put the exit, a little bit before the movement stops, and now you have a trade. LuxAlgo is going to give you all that information and is basically going to say, hey, this is your trade. And it has an incredible track record that I have been using for, goodness, it's probably been over 3 years I've been using LuxAlgo, and it continues to impress me with how powerful it is. Use coupon code JEB30, that's JEBB30 for 30% off at checkout. You'll save yourself $20.40 every single month. You'll save yourself over $400 a year if you use the annual plan and our coupon code combined. That right there, my friends, is financial sovereignty, because you're getting a great product for less. Sign up with the link in the description box down below. I'm going to read chat here for a second, and then we're going to wrap it out. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in. Let's see. Let us see here. Matt C is in chat. Thank you so much for tuning in, Matt C. Queen's in chat. Thank you guys so very much. Let's see if Mario is in chat. Mario was in office hours last night. We had a great conversation about financial sovereignty, and I was reading Genesis chapter 1 yesterday, and I found, and I'll say this and I'll wrap it out. I found in Genesis 1, the first book of the Bible, that financial sovereignty shows up right there. Specifically, mainly the concept of sovereignty, but money and possessions kind of go hand in hand. And so when I say financial, I really mean money and possessions. That's what I mean. The Bible says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, I just memorized this yesterday, so forgive me if I'm a little bit slow to recite this, but it says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. We'll come back to that. And have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. That's Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 and 28. And so the reason that that is so important is because the very first thing that God said to mankind is the first commandment he gave to man. This is not the first commandment of the 10 Commandments. The very first thing that he commanded us, mankind, to do was this. This is verbatim quoted from Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. This is the first thing this is the first thing God said to man when he created them, man and woman. This is the first thing he said to them. The first thing. This is not hello. This is not how you're doing. This is you're pretty cool. This is the very first sentence that God uttered to mankind. He said, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. That is where financial sovereignty shows up in the Bible. And I believe it is the foundation for our journey towards having whatever it is that God desires for you financially. Financial peace is definitely one of them. Financial sovereignty is the way you get there. Being in control of your finances and surrendering them to the Lord with meekness is how you get there. And so I'm here to give you, with 2 verses, the biblical definition of financial sovereignty. Subdue it with meekness. That is the definition of financial sovereignty. And I'll paint it for you. I already read you Genesis 1:28, but I also want to read you Matthew 5:5. You've heard this before. It's in the Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit what? They shall inherit the earth. That's not a coincidence. The way that you become financially sovereign is by gaining control over creation, over whatever part of creation it is that you've been blessed with. I've been blessed with a home. We've been blessed with 2 vehicles. We've been blessed with an office, about a 650 square foot office space here. We've been blessed with various possessions. I mean, I have a coffee mug right here and a water bottle right here, and I have a telephone a phone right here. I have a camera right here. I have this computer right here. I have this soundboard right here. I have this Amaran 200D right here. I've got this, the paint on these walls. I've got these lights. I've got stuff. I have part of creation in my control. And the question is whether or not I'm going to be in control of it or if it's going to be in control of me. The question of, X amount of money in our bank account, am I in control of it? Are me and my wife, because we're one, in control of it, or is it in control of us? We must render control over the creation around us. And then, very critically, we must give it right back to God because it's his in the first place. It talks about that in I think it's Deuteronomy. I forget where, I need to memorize this too, but it literally says, and we're giving to God what was his anyway. That's a paraphrase, but that's pretty much what it says. We surrender our finances to God. We let him lead us because they're his anyway. And so the reason that I say the definition of financial sovereignty shows up in 2 verses, and it is combined because you have to have both, is subdue it with meekness. Subdue means to have dominion over. It means to have control over. It literally means in the Hebrew to bring under bondage. Bring your slice of creation, the land you own, the home you own, the money you own, under bondage. Have control over it and be in dominion over it. Be a faithful steward of it. Be a servant with it. And by the way, humans kind of exist somewhere in between creation and heaven because we're made in the image of God. You're not always going to have control over humans, and it's a very good thing that we don't. Oftentimes when we have control over another human, it ends up poorly. I'm not specifically talking about having control over another human. I'm a father. I have control over my son to a certain degree, and I dang well better ought to be a good steward of that because it's a very, very, very serious place for God to have put me in. That's a very serious position for me to be in as a father of 2. If I am in control of them, and I am, I'm in control of where they go. I'm in control of when they eat. I'm in control of these things as their parent, and I should be. But I dang well ought to better be a good steward of that. So being in control does not mean you're a tyrant. It does not mean you're a dictator. It means that you are a faithful steward and servant. And so that's why when we say subdue it, we also have to couple it with meekness. Again, it's no coincidence that the Beatitude says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit what? They shall inherit, not earn, because we couldn't earn anything. We're fallen. We shall inherit from our Savior the earth. To become financial, let me just put it like this. Let me summarize all this and then we'll wrap it out. If you want financial peace, if you want financial freedom, if you want financial this, that, or the other, if you want to be Lord over your finances, over your possessions, rather than them being Lord over you, you must first render control of them. But how do you do that? You don't go and conquer them. You don't go and become a dictator. You don't go and have these horrible thoughts about yourself like, oh my gosh, Jeb, you're stupid. You need to do better. You do it God's way. And how do you do that? You be a servant of the Lord, and he will give it to you. How do you get the earth? How do you have control over this part of the earth of creation that you have been given? The way you do that is by being meek, because you will inherit the earth. If you want to become financially sovereign, you have to inherit it from the man and the creator that made it. And the way you do that, Matthew 5:5 tells us, is by being meek. Meekness is not weakness. You must be a leader, because leaders do have the ability to control things, but you are not a leader because you're in control. You are in control, and you have the great burden and responsibility of being in control because you're a leader. And so be a leader in your life. Be a leader who is in submission to God and his word, because you will not be successful financially without being in submission to what his word says. His word says things such as this. His word says the borrower is slave to the lender. It talks about that. The word talks about all kinds of biblical principles. It talks about hard work. It talks about work ethic. It talks about being a man that stands by your commitments even to your own hurt. There are plenty of principles in God's word that will teach you how to be a leader financially over your possessions and over your money. And so if you want to be in control of your money, i.e. being financially sovereign, you must be a leader, and you must do it his way, and you must do it with meekness. And what is meekness? Meekness is doing it God's way, based on the leading of his spirit and based on what his word tells you to do. And if you do that, you will become financially sovereign. I can guarantee it, because the definition of financial sovereignty is subduing it with meekness, being in control of the area of creation that you've been blessed with, and doing it with meekness God's way, because he says in his word that blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. That is a promise. If you want to inherit the earth, you must do it with meekness, because that's what the word tells you to do. And if you want financial sovereignty, i.e. being in control over your area of creation, and by the way, that is not an option. That is a command that God gave to mankind. It was the very first thing that God ever said to us: subdue it. That is the part of creation that we have dominion over. Subdue it, be in control of it, and then do it his way and surrender it back to him. Give it back to him, because it's his in the first place. And go and do things in this world. Mainly what? Mainly being generous, mainly helping others. Yes, enjoying it, and we should enjoy the fruits of our labor, but mainly using it in service to the foreigner, the poor, the orphan, the widow. Those are the four that the Bible talks about over and over and over again. The afflicted. Using your money, yes, to enjoy it, but the real point is to grow it and then be generous with it and give it to the Lord, because that's what he did with it. And I'll leave you with one parable. Jesus had somebody come to him, and I believe it was somewhere in the teens chapter of Matthew. And the man came to him and he said, Jesus, what do I do to be saved? And Christ said, follow the commandments. Do not steal. Do not murder. Do not speak ill of father or mother. Follow the commandments. And the man said, I've done all these things since I was a youth. What do I need to be saved? And Jesus gave him not a corporate command to all of mankind, but he gave him specifically a command. He said, and he did this because he knew the state of the man's heart. He knew the man was not financially sovereign, and he knew it was a problem. And again, financial sovereignty is a word I made up, but I do believe that is what it is a word that I use to help define what Christ in the Bible is talking about. He said, sell all of your possessions and give it to the poor. Use the word all. Sell all of your possessions, your money, your possessions, same thing, just different form. Money's a possession. Possessions cost money. Same thing, really. Sell it and give it to the poor. And he didn't. He walked away and he was rich, but he was not financially sovereign because he was not in control enough of his money to surrender it to his Lord, and he chose money over God, and he suffered for it. And so financial sovereignty sometimes does mean that you will give all of your money to the poor. And sometimes being financially sovereign does mean that you will give everything away. And sometimes being financially sovereign does mean you will have less tomorrow than you do today, because that's what you were told to do. But it does mean having control over your finances. And I guarantee you, if that man had obeyed Jesus, he would have been much poorer, but he would have peace. And that is way better than any amount of money in your bank account. Financial sovereignty is the way to achieve financial peace. You've heard many people talk about financial peace. You've heard Dave Ramsey talk about it. You've heard me talk about it. It's a very important concept, but the way you get there is by being in control of your money, subduing it with meekness, surrendering it to the Lord, and doing what he commands you to do. And you do that through practical things like learning how to trade. You do that through practical things like setting a budget. You do that through maintaining order over your possessions. You do that through being in sovereign control over that which is around you. And so that, my friends, is what financial sovereignty is biblically. It is Bible. It is straight facts. And so over the next 40 years, Lord willing, if I am able to continue teaching these things, then I hope and pray that you'll see the impacts of that in my life. And you'll see, wow, wait a minute. I thought Jeb was crazy because he's talking about this book that was written 3,000 years, 4,000 years ago, depending on what book you're reading in the Bible. I thought he was crazy. Like, what is he talking about? This is nuts. What is going on? I hope you come back in 20 years and you see that the principles that I'm teaching you right now are, first of all, 100% true, because every single letter of God's word is true. And second of all, I pray that you will see that they've had a positive impact on my life and the impact and have had a positive impact on the life of the people that have embodied them. So please never forget that having control over creation is not the essence of the law and the prophets. That is love God and love your neighbor. I'm not trying to elevate that part of Scripture, but I do just want to make the point that it was not a coincidence that the very first thing that God said to mankind was be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Why? That is kind of the baseline way that you're going to do the next part of the command, and subdue it. Subdue it with what? Meekness. You do that, you'll be financially sovereign, and being financially sovereign will lead to the financial peace that you're looking for. And I'm very excited to share that message with you. All right. Hope you guys had a wonderful time here on the stream. I know many of you are probably like, oh man, Jeb, the first 75% of the stream was really amazing, and then I don't know what happened that last part. I know you might not know what's happened, but I promise you, if you follow it, you will be better off, whether you're a believer or not. You can walk away from this and not be a believer. I hope you will. I hope you will become a believer. I hope you will accept the Lord. But even if you don't, you can walk away with these principles, and I guarantee you, in business school, they teach you, give your customers a guarantee. Give your customers some kind of guarantee. This is the best guarantee I can give you, God's word. I guarantee you, I promise you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, your life will be better if you implement these principles. Your financial life will be better if you do what the Bible tells you to do. I guarantee it, without a doubt. There is not a shadow of doubt in my mind that your life will be better if you follow these principles. I promise you. I guarantee it. Because the author of this world, the creator of finance, knows way more about it than I do. So I'm going to do it his way because he's the one that made it. Okay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys that chose to stay. I know some of you guys are going to be like, oh man, I don't know about this. It's a little weird. I'm going to come back later. That's okay. That's fine. But I hope you appreciated what we talked about today. As I said, if you enjoyed today's stream, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, sign up for Lux Algo, use coupon code JEB30 for 30% off at checkout. It's not wrong to be rich. By the way, in case any of you guys have that limiting belief, it is not evil to be rich. Money itself is not evil. The Bible says in 1 Timothy 6:10, the love of evil is the root. The love of money is the root of all evil. The love of this world, it's called money, but in that money possessions, this world, the love of creation over God is the root of all evil. Being financially wise is not evil. Growing your wealth is not evil. It is important, and it is praised in the parable of the talents. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it out. I do look forward to seeing you guys in the next stream. If you enjoyed, again, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to go, but before I do just first want to thank each and every single last one of you for watching, as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Oh, I got a real good feeling.